Okay, I'm with you now. So lead on.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Last Tuesday night, in terms of football, it was a very, very sad night. But beyond football, touching on other sectors, the psyche of Nigerians, their emotions, the economy, and how that night impacted on their economy, and other such related issues, it was indeed a catastrophe with capital C. Nigerians have continued since then to show anger and frustration at what happened during that event. But let us start, first of all, by commiserating with the families of those that suffered either from death or injuries or whatever during that stampede after the march. And also, the day before, those that lost their lives in that train incident between Abuja and Kaduna. All of us on the Sports Parliament send our sincere condolences. Tonight on the show, we shall be shedding all sentiments, totally, and we shall be looking beneath what happened on Tuesday at the bigger implications and the future. All of that put together in 50 minutes of the Sports Parliament tonight, coming to you live from the studios of NTA. I am Segun Odegbami, your speaker, and this is NTA, viewed by over 60 million Nigerians and more across the continent of Africa. And if you are streaming us across the world, sitting with me tonight in Parliament is one, the Maverick himself, who has this big sign on his chest that says, "What God cannot do does not exist." The Maverick, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank you for having me on this show tonight. It's a very, very tough one. It is only by the grace of God I am on this show. I will be very sober throughout this show, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for having me.
Well, and we have, from looking at his background, from Jos, because whenever he's in Jos, he looks calm and cool and calculated. But he's in Abuja. The man is in Abuja, the veteran himself. Well, Abdurrahman Ibn Mohammed. Abdurrahman, good evening.
Thank you for having me on the show this evening, Mr. Speaker. And I want to throw the the path that you have thrown open this edition of the program is really one that it's a must do. Otherwise, one would have tried to avoid it. But here on this program, we had heaped hope upon hope, and it did not come to pass. It is time for judgment.
Doctor in the house, the man who was there, who saw it all from start to finish, Dr. Kweku Tando. Kweku, how are you tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Speaker. Good evening, fellow parliamentarians. It's good to be here this evening to talk about this all-important topic.
And from Ibadan, Waheed Ekun.
Yeah,
the man who doesn't spare anyone with his words, coming from Ibadan.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to be on the program, but on a sad note, because we lost the match and we lost some lives. You know, it was unfortunate. It was a very bad day for Nigeria as a whole. I mean, so I commiserate with all the families of those who lost their lives and who had injuries, apart from the Kaduna, Abuja train.
Okay, well, and all the way from the United Kingdom, probably in Glasgow or in Wales, either of those two places. The man is back. He is a neutral, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say about all these things going on in African football. Satish Seka. Satish, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be here again, but obviously the circumstances could have been a lot better.
So let's just take a minute to just, gather our thoughts together as we go on this short break. Join us after the break.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, The Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Yeah, well, let me make a confession. I have not received the number of messages on WhatsApp, on SMS, as I have done in the past 24 hours. Since I started using my telephone, it has been messages. And, it's just impossible to respond to people. If you notice, shortly before we played that match, I had no comments to make because there were so many things that I didn't feel comfortable with. However, that's not an excuse. Let us start from the very top, that match itself. Onome Obrute, on this show, over and over, and we supported him rather recklessly as we now look back, at what happened, to say that there was no way on earth that we are going to lose to Ghana. And it was fulfilled because we did not lose. Contrary to what Waheed Ekun said, we did not actually lose to Ghana. It was a 1-1 draw. It was a 0-0 draw in Kumasi. So
technically,
so it was not as if we lost, but we did not qualify. We failed to qualify. The bad part of it, as far as I'm concerned, was the manner in which we did not qualify. You see, that match itself, I have analyzed it over and over and over again. And look, the truth is, only very few people have sounded, the way I felt that match went. So I will leave it to Onome to start the conversation this evening by telling us, how do you think that match went?
Fellow Nigerians, let me start by apologizing profoundly to you all, and let me commiserate with the families of those who lost their lives in the past few days. May God grant them eternal rest. Mr. Speaker, I am extremely disappointed. Like I said the morning of the game, I said we would only fail to qualify if the players failed to turn up on the pitch. And that was exactly what they did. As at the 70th minute, there was no more oxygen in any of the players. They were tired. I don't want to blame anybody. I will blame myself for having any faith in those players. I am thoroughly disappointed. I cannot even explain what they played that day. It was shambolic. There is nothing to say. I always maintain when you play well and lose, it's far better than for you to come. Mr. Speaker, since your days where you played football, I have not seen any stadium in Nigeria, apart from when we played Egypt in Kaduna. I have not seen any time in Nigeria. That Abuja stadium has never been filled to capacity before. Never. Including when we used it for Koja. It has never been that full. It was filled. My cousin's husband, who turned 50 today, Stanley Omagbemi, was telling me that the number of people outside when he got to the stadium at 5 p.m. was the amount of people he saw when he got into the stadium at about 6.
What has that got to do with the match? What has that got to do with the match?
Mr. Speaker, I am saying we are thoroughly disappointed. The support we gave to the players, everything we gave to them, they broke our hearts. All I'm saying here, Mr. Speaker, is I have not seen Nigerians unite since your heydays that way to support the Super Eagles, yet they flattered to deceive us. I am totally disappointed. I don't have any words to use other than to apologize for having faith and predicting that we will overcome Ghana.
Okay. You have not talked about the match itself. I sense
there is nothing to say, sir.
That's okay. No, that's okay. I sense your disappointment. And you always tell us that we are old-fashioned. We should not be looking at, oh, that's your olden days thing. But now you are the one that is raising our time now in discussing what we are discussing tonight. But let me go to Abdurrahman Ibn Mohammed. Look, our players, not as we projected them. Did we overrate them or what? Because I saw them play, but they couldn't play really. We didn't have a Mikel Obi in the midfield. We didn't have, a JJ Okocha. We didn't have a Mutiu Adepoju. We didn't have those people who could do things with the ball. When things are challenging, they could do certain things with the ball. We didn't have anybody like that. In fact, in the whole team, apart from the center forward, we didn't have anybody who could actually hold the ball and keep it and do things with it, and you could see progress. We just went back to 1950 football, kicking from back to front, because there was nothing out there in the midfield. Anyway, Abdurrahman Ibn Mohammed. I'm only the speaker. I'm sorry, I'm only the speaker. I shouldn't be participating like this. But go on.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I believe you can't help but say those things that you are saying. But from my point of view, I think to say that Nigerians were disappointed by the shambolic show of the Eagles on the day in question is probably understating it. We, journalists and members of this parliament inclusive, I think we are flattered to deceive by the Eagles. But with the benefit of hindsight, I think we got sucked into the euphoria, the emotions of wanting to see our national flag, at the Mundial. But on the evidence of play, they simply did not turn up. The few of them that could have done so never had the opportunity to do so. Well, they had the opportunity, but they could not up their ante to really show us that they are, bona fide players of Nigeria. They simply didn't turn up. To use your own words, you've never seen a Ghanaian team as bad as that one. And for us not to be able to take our advantage over such a team shows that we are probably as bad as they are, if not worse. And frankly, I wonder why it took us this long for reality to befall us. You've just started counting them. We didn't have an Okocha on that field. We didn't have a Rashidi Yekini on that pitch. We didn't have a winger, either an Elaho or a Baba Ochu Mohammed on that field. We didn't have a Shegun Odegbami on that pitch. And all our players, at least the ones that we know of, the ones that we monitor from Europe, wherever they are playing, there isn't one that you could put in the same category like Sadio Mane or Mohamed Salah, players that can turn a game, given a situation. If we got into a very, very bad situation, a player that can turn around a game. And tactically or technically, I think the coaches didn't exactly know what to do because the Ghanaians appear to have read our scripts and we just couldn't get going. The only player that you tried to mention, Victor Osimhen, he never got the service that he ought to have gotten. And like we saw him in Kumasi, he was just running up and down, falling, up and down and falling. Obviously, the Ghanaians had read what we planned to do with Osimhen. They locked him out, locked out the service that ought to have come to him. So ideally, our coaches or technical team ought to have changed tactics or remove Osimhen, bring someone that they could not have expected to be there. And Ighalo was just simply sitting on the bench. Sadiq was simply sitting on the bench. And Ahmed Musa was simply sitting on the bench. Ahmed Musa and Ighalo were brought in barely 10 minutes to the end of the game. They couldn't have done anything because, like Onome stated, their other colleagues, by that 70th minute, were all tired because they had tried all that they could, but they couldn't really come together, gel. So to cut a long story short, we do not have a player of world standing as we speak, even in their club sides, apart from Osimhen, who his Italian coaches apparently know what to do with him. They provide him with the service and he delivered. Apart from Osimhen, none of the players that we have, you could categorically say it can change a game, turn a game on its head, given a split second or given some 5 minutes. And that's the reality.
Okay, that's the reality. Abdurrahman, that is the reality, that we just didn't have the quality of players. And when things like this happen, take the example of Algeria. The entire board of Algeria took responsibility. Our own board is apologizing again to Nigerians. Kweku Tando.
Well, good evening. Before I go to the response of our board, because I can't speak for them.
I'm not saying you should speak for them. I'm just telling you what the reaction is. Don't speak for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would not.
Are we blaming the players? Are we blaming the players?
The players are part of the blame, definitely. The NFF is part of the blame. The coaches are part of the blame. But for me, it goes beyond just looking for who to blame. For me, it goes on to looking for a solution that will prevent such things happening. And for me, it's a total restructuring of our football system in the country, right from the local government level to the state FA level and to the national level. You see, I'm not really interested in us going to the World Cup when the state of our domestic football is comatose. For me, we're just peppering the cracks. Yes, it's good, especially for those who have business investments and all that. But if going to the World Cup is a reflection of the state of football in the country, then we don't deserve to go there. And I think that is what we should be looking at now, rather than looking at blames for the players or whatever. What is a long-term solution that will prevent this kind of thing from happening? That's the way I want to look at it.
Why Deku?
Yeah. Yes, my thoughts. It was a sad day for me and for a lot of fans in Ibadan, particularly the result of that match. What I discovered is that the quality of the players and the quality of performance was not quite enough. Anytime we need to, determine the physical quality and the mental quality. Mental quality of our players are not enough or are not what standard. That's what we should all learn about our performance. If our players are intelligent, let me use that word. I'm sorry to use intelligent players. They would have displayed more aggression and more.
No. Please take back that word. Please take back that word. We won't.
Yes, I'm sorry to use that word. Okay,
no, don't use it. Please don't use it.
Okay, I'm withdrawing that word, but at the same time, I want to say that the mental preparation of our players is not enough. And then I'm thinking that it's appropriate at this time that we must involve psychologists in the team, who will talk to them, who will prep them up, who will talk to them to be able to improve their standard mentally. This is actually what is happening. This is the result of what we are seeing. Don't let me use another word. I want to say we are lazy mentally to be able to, up our games at the appropriate time. It was such a disappointing game. We couldn't compare the standard of intelligence displayed on that day with some squads of the past. We Nigerians are used to good football, good performance. But at the same time, what we saw of the boys on that day was not quite enough. And then technical crew, we've all seen what they could do, because technical side supposed to assist the team to change pattern, to change tactics, to change everything. But unfortunately, maybe they did, but at the same time, it was not enough to overcome the thing. We have seen their performance, but at the same time, the players themselves are supposed to be able to deliver the match for us or the game for us, but unfortunately, they were not up there. So it's unfortunate that we had.
But you cannot offer what you do not have. Satish Seka, you are a neutral in this. When things like this happen, what do you do to the team as a whole? Is it that you start to blame the players or you blame the coaches and then you don't do anything? What happens? What's the norm? What's the practice when a team fails as we have failed?
Well, the first thing is there's a lot of blame to go around. It's not just the players, it's the technical team, it's the Nigerian Football Federation, it's pretty much everybody. As has been said earlier in the conversation, this was not a great Ghanaian team. They don't have a Sadio Mane or a Mohamed Salah in their team either. So you can't use the argument of saying, well, we don't have a great player that we can work around. They didn't either, and they still managed to win. So
they didn't win. They didn't win, please.
They won in terms of they're the team that is going to the World Cup.
Yes.
So
yes.
Even though technically you didn't lose, you effectively did because you're not going to the World Cup.
Yeah.
So what you have to look at with this is, why did this happen? What is the reasons that this went wrong? And what are the lessons of it? And how do we stop it from happening again? What you have to do from this is say, this is the starting point. We now have to look to the future. There's no point saying, we didn't make it to the World Cup. No, that's the end of it. It's not. It can be a beginning. But it is only going to be a beginning if you actually have proper planning. And that means you're not looking at just the next Africa Cup of Nations, bringing a few players through and changing the technical team, changing the coach. That happens a lot. If you don't deliver exactly what you want, you get rid of the coach. And then you have to start from scratch because the new coach comes in with different ideas. Wants his own team. Does he get it? Does he get the actual bench that he wants? Do the players have the trust in the coach because they don't know what they're doing? And by that, I mean, you have a setup under the previous coach. You learn what the coach wants, you play to that, and then you have a new coach, the whole thing, and you have to learn it. One thing that needs to be noted here is you have to give proper time. You have to look and see who can actually inspire these players, who you can bring through, and have a proper long-term plan. And by that, I mean you have short-term planning, which is, I want gratification, I want it right now. Well, the problem with that is you rarely get any kind of gratification. What you actually manage to do is lose. You change the coach, you lose again. You change the coach, you lose again. But if you give the coach time to build and basically say, well, we may lose. We may not go to the next Africa Cup of Nations. We may not go to the next World Cup. Is this a disaster? No, it isn't. If you have a plan, if you have a short-term plan, an intermediate plan, and a long-term plan, and that long-term plan isn't about going to the World Cup and that being an end in itself. It isn't about winning the Africa Cup of Nations once. It's about setting up a dynasty. So what I would be looking at here is, what can the Nigerian, the NFF do now? As you mentioned,
an NFF that has just failed. I don't know what you people are talking about. Look, when you lose a huge game such as this, the first place you go to is who is responsible.
Yes.
And there's only one body responsible for all of Nigerian football.
You didn't let me
finish.
When England, so you are going back to those who
you didn't let me finish. What I was actually going to say is what the Algerian board did is the way forward. You have to take proper responsibility. If you fail like this, you have to take proper responsibility. You need a new board.
This is a board that has been there for 8 years. We have just lost. It appears people don't appreciate the amount of loss we have suffered by not going to this Qatar thing.
Big Sheikh, I don't think this is the time for us to be sentimental. I think this is.
And you are being sentimental. This is not sentimental. You are the one being sentimental. You said we should do reforms. Where do you start the reforms from?
By getting rid of the reforms. By bringing in a new board, new vision. That's where you start.
When England did not qualify for the World Cup, they didn't sack their FA.
We are not there. We are Nigeria. We are Nigeria. I'm talking of Nigeria.
Let's do it properly. Otherwise, you will sack and you will end up getting the same thing again, because the structure is defective. You can't begin to plant on a structure that is defective. You will not get anything good out of it.
That's what we are saying.
Yes. So it's not about.
So who will do the reform that you suggested? No, this is good conversation. Who will do the reform that we suggested?
It's a national process.
Is it the government? Let's be specific. Government do it. NFA do it. Who will do it? Who will do it?
The Nigerian government will do it.
Now you are specific. I'm not saying that the answer, but you are specific.
No. For example, when it happened in Germany, it wasn't the German government that did it. It was the German FA that did it. They didn't sack the FA, but the FA sat down.
The German government was involved. Please, in 2004, the German government was involved. They involved all the coaches across Germany, 600 of them.
Exactly, but they didn't sack the FA.
I'm not saying, look, why are you looking at a prescription from somewhere? I am saying our own prescription. The situation in Germany is different. So let us be specific.
What I'm trying to say is that the solution is not to sack anybody for me. That's not the solution.
But they have sacked the coaches. We are blaming the players. We have removed the coaches. So those are steps. You can't keep the same group that have failed. You cannot. It is not done anywhere. Some people must pay the price. Some people must pay the price. You don't lose and then you just say, go on.
We're not the only ones. We're not the only ones that have not qualified for a World Cup.
We are talking of Nigeria now. Don't let us.
No. We need to look at.
Okay, I'm just the speaker. Sorry, Kweku, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we think, you see, this is what happens most times when we react without. I'm a strategic planning person, and I've always maintained that fact. you cannot plant on a defective foundation. Let us go to the foundation of our domestic football in terms of administration, in terms of structure. Look, get rid of the NFF and then you get new people into the place under the same NFF statutes. Nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. We will end up the same way. So for me, this is an opportunity for us to go back and sit down and begin to put the right structures in place to ensure that we have a football system that can give us something to be proud of, like it was done in many other countries. That's just what I'm going to say. Let me allow others to speak.
Who will take these steps? Who will take the steps? That's all I'm asking. Who will take the steps?
Let me allow Abdurrahman to talk. He wants to talk.
Okay, Abdurrahman, sorry, apologies.
Kweku and Mr. Speaker, I do agree with what Kweku is saying, and also at the same time with what Mr. Speaker is saying. There must be fundamental changes. Kweku doesn't seem to like the way Mr. Speaker is putting it, that the NFF, as presently constituted, is part of the problem.
No, they are part of the problem, definitely.
Kweku doesn't think that they should be fired. But
nobody should fire them. They can't fire them. You can't fire them.
They are elected.
Saying that
you can't
we
fire
cannot
them.
make progress, given the current statutes that have, been governing the NFF down to the state FAs, down to the local government FAs. For instance, I think part of the statutes does not allow anyone from outside the current core members of the NFF to get on board, not to talk of being elected president. This ostracizes people that have, the interest of the game at heart, who may be spending their own money to fund clubs, and, that's, puts them away, that discourages them. Take an example of how Patrick Motsepe, the current president of CAF, has come on board. He wasn't the president of the South African FA. The man runs a club because he has football at heart, and he runs a football club where he spends billions of South African rand to keep the club afloat. And the CAF statutes does not debar people like that from coming in. The man plotted his graph, and he is there. But in Nigeria, someone like the guys that may be running an Ifeanyi Uba Football Club, a Giwa Football Club of Jos, they have been ostracized. They cannot come in. It's only the core people that are there now. They have put in, clauses that protect themselves in there. And so long as we continue going this way and we are not making progress, I agree with Kweku and you, Mr. Speaker, that we shall not make progress. So until fundamental changes are made, they may not have the current members may not have the same minds as the Algerians, who out of shame or regret or embarrassment decided that after they have fired the coach, we are also going away. The FA president relinquished his position, and the members also resigned en masse. It's left for the government to put together a machinery that will bring some other people on board. Is that possible in Nigeria? Do we have that kind of scenario? Because certainly we need to start somewhere. But at the same time, we don't need to throw the baby out with the baby out with the bathwater. So we need to be strategic in thinking. Are members of the NFF, as currently constituted, patriotic enough to realize that we cannot do it? Perhaps if they have not resigned, maybe they think they can do it. But under what kind of system can they do it? Something has to be done. And I think that perhaps we need to place maybe a moratorium on our participation at international football until such a time that our local league can produce players like you, Mr. Speaker. You were a product of the local league from Ibadan, from Jos to Ibadan, along with your colleagues. Adoke was a product of Nuga. You can count them. That is no longer feasible. Nuga has just been concluded. Dr. Kweku was part of it. Were there any new discoveries made? Nigerian Sports Federation, we have hammered it here on this platform, several times that they need to come together to get their act together so that people can be discovered. Young men and women can be discovered and nurtured. If we don't do that, we want to be plucking from the top.
Okay,
So
Abdurrahman, I think we're halfway through the program already. We're halfway through the program. Let's go on this short break. And when we come back, we just take it shoki. That is short. And then so that we can run through. But one thing I can promise, this situation, I'm very emotional about it. And the present situation is so bad because it affects the livelihood of millions of Nigerians. This loss that we just suffered affects millions of Nigerians. It's not a joking matter. So next week, we are extending this program. We are going to continue it next week so that we can take all of it. We can't do it in 50 minutes. After the break, let's just go on this short break, take our breath a little, and then come back and, we do it softly this time.
And there's the start. Promises to Shero. Winds up that right hand. Archbishop of basketball, goal! He hung on that net like a stalk up a tree.
NTA Sports 24 brings you all sports, all time and all day. Tune in to watch NTA Sports 24 on Star Times Channel 270, StarSat on Channel 434 and Free TV on Channel 731. NTA Sports 24, where sports thrive.
Well, welcome back. I was just deep in thoughts there. If you are just joining us, this is the Sports Parliament, and it's coming to you live from our studios in NTA. Don't be surprised that the temperature of tonight's conversation is a little bit heated. It's just a reflection of the times. So let us cool it down and go to Onome. The man has been in a pensive mood tonight, and I want now for him to start to project in the future. Things like this just don't happen, and nothing happens. Apologies for sure are not just enough. They won't heal our pains.
He's on the mountain.
Onome?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. To be honest, I think everything should go. I just think we should start afresh. I think I asked a simple question in one of the forums we all belong to. There were 5 coaches on that bench. There was Augustine Cereza Guavon. There was Emmanuel Amunike. There was Salisu. There was Aloy Agu. And there was Joseph Yobo. Amongst these 5, we played that rubbish. I mean, how do you now tomorrow get up and begin to advocate for local coaches? How do you now have 5 homegrown based local coaches and you bring players that cannot last 70 minutes? How? Mr. Speaker, I am constrained. I don't know what to say. Therefore, I have come to the conclusion that we need to weed everything. This is not to boast, sir. There are players in Jos that will be that Ghanaian team. There are teams in Jos, there are teams in Warri, there are teams in Ajegunle that will be that Ghanaian team. That Ghanaian team had no form, no shape, nothing. Porous, a team Comoros dismantled. I mean, there is nothing to write home about. Their goalkeeper is in Swindon Town, a 4th division team. Which of those Ghanaian players do we know that you say today, for example, if you want to talk about them, you know? Apart from the young man in Crystal Palace, Amate in Leicester, and maybe Kudus in Ajax. Tell me any other player on that team, and Partey, of course, of Arsenal. Which other player do you know? all our players are overfed babies. I am done, Mr. Speaker. I am not here to call names, or we know the right thing. Okay, let me end with this, sir. Postmortem. Dr. Kweku Tando, Oga Mohammed, Satish, Mr. Speaker, and Oga, I want to ask a question. What was Abdullahi Shehu doing on that pitch?
Who is he?
Okay, he played the midfield by the time we took out Onyeka of Brighton. What was Shehu doing on that pitch? We had 5 local, well-traveled, assumed...
Was that his debut match? Was that his debut match?
He's been in that team for over 10 years.
So we know where he plays. Has he ever played that position before?
Oh, yes, he started from that position. He's a utility footballer. But after 15 minutes of coming on, he was panting and begging for breath. Was that game played in Tesclam in Nigeria? Was that game played in the high hills of Swaziland? Was that game not played in Abuja? It is irritating. It's disappointing. And I know myself, so I'm trying to restrain myself from talking. The minister did very well by saying, you know what, let us use our own. Let us use our own coaches. Let us stick to our own coaches. A very noble idea. We supported it. Almost everybody on this platform supported it. Look at what they have done to us. My question, Mr. Speaker, I still ask this question. So we played Ghana home and away with those overfed babies. We could not bring any player from the local league. And then you start telling me that administrators... No, I will end with this. Mr. Speaker, please, let me end with this. Let me end with this. I'm sorry, sir. Please.
Okay.
I didn't want to talk. So let me
I don't want emotions to run through this.
No, this is not emotions. I'm saying facts. And then you start reading in some quarters that are people saying administrators impose players on the coach. That is bullshit talk. That's hogwash. That's rubbish. No coach wants to fail. Then Nigeria is playing a crucial match. A player that has only played minutes since January 1 is starting. A goalkeeper that is third choice in Cyprus is starting. Players that have played 15 minutes are starting. And we want to go to the World Cup. God forbid. I will go to Qatar and support.
Okay. Emotions are running into this. And, you are speaking about the players as if the players brought themselves there. As if the players brought themselves to come and play in the national team. Look, I am from that constituency. Wait, listen now. I am from that constituency. And I will not accept the way you have categorized, our players. I will not accept that, for sure. No player brought himself there to come and play. He was brought there to come and play. And they cannot play what they do not know. And we have said already that the players' standards, their quality does not match some of those that we have seen in the past. You cannot transform them by word of mouth. So if they are not good enough for that standard, so why would you expect them to do more than that? Some people brought them there. So don't condemn players.
I apologize. But before I zip my mouth, sir, my greatest joy is that I am very certain that about 8 of them have finally retired. They will never play for Nigeria again.
Well, Satish, I want you to come and moderate this because let's look beyond even Nigeria now. 3 of the biggest economies in Africa. In fact, the 3 biggest economies in Africa that FIFA, the World Cup, would feel their absence in that World Cup. 1, Salah is not there. Egypt is not going to be at the World Cup. Salah is the biggest footballer on the continent of Africa today in terms of followership and resources and all of that. Egypt are not going. South Africa is the 2nd biggest economy. At the World Cup, when South Africa goes or Nigeria goes, you have the largest African audiences from South Africa and Nigeria. The World Cup will be missing those 2. And Egypt, the 3 biggest economies. Satish, just look at it globally from that perspective, if you can.
Well, What I would say to this is that these problems started a long time ago, and it is to do with the lack of unity within African football, because people take too much joy at the suffering of other teams. For example, if you look at Egypt, the way they went out of this particular qualification, it's a disgrace. Look at it. You will see the lasers in the eyes of Mohamed Salah, in the eyes of the goalkeeper, in the eyes of other players during a penalty shootout. And if you look on social media, you find people saying, but Egypt started this. They were the ones who used the lasers in the first place. Yeah, they did. And they did it at a time before it was actually illegal in football. It isn't right. It's absolutely atrocious that this was done. But you look at this and say, it's okay. People say they got what they deserve. They didn't. What you have is, however good Senegal are, however well they perform, there's going to be a little taint on Senegal in the World Cup because of this treatment of the Egyptian players during this particular match. At the very least, and you also look at this and say, look at the reaction of CAF, look at the reaction of FIFA. This is outright blatant cheating. There's no other way you can say this. If they had been on the receiving end of this, if Nigerians had been on the receiving end of it, you would be up in arms about it. Well, as Benjamin Franklin once said, it's a paraphrasing of it, but he basically said, things will never change until those who are not affected are as outraged as those who are. And that is part of the problem. You look at the way you have allocation of World Cup places. This battle should have been going on a long time ago. It should have been saying that Africa has been cheated. You wouldn't have this. But you also need to look at this whole process and say, how are you going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with it in the future? The rest of the world is laughing because they're looking at this and saying, they're at each other's throats. They're not bothering with this. Now, you look at the Nigerian situation and you'll find a fact which has not been mentioned. The hosts of this current World Cup, Qatar, there are 29 teams which have qualified for the World Cup. Do you know the only team which is on a lower FIFA ranking than Qatar? Qatar is in pot one. There's only one team of the 29 that have qualified so far that's on a lower ranking. Do you know which that team is?
Ghana.
Yeah.
Well, we are going on a different tangent. That's a totally different conversation, and we have run out of time for today's show. And I still want to give everybody an opportunity to say one or two things before we come back next week. So, Waidekun, very quickly, your final thoughts on tonight's show.
I just want to appeal last Tuesday. I just want to appeal to all of us to not to allow emotions to take better part of us in discussing all these things. If it were to be in other crimes, some people would have resigned, in one form or the other, But Nigeria, being what we are, such things are not happening here in Nigeria. But we should give them the opportunity, and whoever has any solution to it, we all know where to process our complaints, our suggestions towards them. So there's no point being emotional and being something.
Okay. Abdurrahman, your final thoughts on tonight's show, please. What do we take away? What do Nigerians, 60 million of us, take away from tonight's conversation that has been so heated? In 1 minute.
Well, what Nigerians can take away from this conversation on the Sports Parliament tonight is that we have tried to voice their frustration. Nigerians have been left with the short end of the stick. The team, the Super Eagles players, flattered to deceive us. and we acknowledge that the quality is not there. But like Onome and others have stated, we have players in the local league that would have given this Ghanaian team a very good run for their money, and would have, even if they do not win, they would have played their hearts out, and you could see the efforts. Nigerians didn't see the efforts. Nigerians didn't see the passion with this set of players, and that is accounting for the disappointment. Because if they had played their hearts out, the effort and passion was seen, Nigerians would forgive, because in football, it's win, lose, or draw. And I think that is it. We just have to take it. It has happened. It has happened. There is nothing anyone can do except that we go back to the drawing board, but in a fundamental way, the status of the NFF, Nigerian school sports, and so on and so forth, so that we can build for the future.
Okay. Well, Kweku, you have 30 seconds now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
To come down from that high temperature, forget about me. Yeah.
No. It's part of the discussion. I have a solution and I'm going to be pushing that solution.
Okay.
Number
45 seconds.
Number one, the government writes to FIFA that we want to pull out of international football for 2 years. Number two, the government now has the opportunity to look at the statutes of football in Nigeria from local government level to state government level and to the NFF to ensure that when we go back and reapply to begin to play international football, we have the right foundation. That is my solution for now.
Fantastic. Onome, last words. You have 5 seconds. Onome, 5 seconds.
Everything should go. We should leave football for the next 4 years. Let's focus on boxing, swimming, volleyball, athletics. Let Nigerians love other sports for once, and let us get it right. Let us get leadership right, administrative wise. Let us get it right. Let us get the head coaches.
Okay, Satish, you have 2 seconds. Satish, 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Your last words.
My solution would be you have to look at the measure of success in Nigerian football, which is you have to go to Europe, preferably to England and the Premier League. If you continue to have that idea, you are going to fail and fail miserably, because you can't possibly build Nigerian football within Nigeria with that attitude. You have to start building Nigerian football at home.
Fantastic. We have to start building Nigerian football at home. We must domesticate the problems, the solution to Nigerian football. Well, we'll be coming back next week. And after listening to everybody tonight, I tell you, I have a feeling that we truly, collectively, do not have a full appreciation of the amount of loss or damage this Qatar, exit has done us. I'm going to beg Idorenyi Uyo next week to come on this show and for 5 minutes to tell us what Nigeria has lost by not going to the World Cup. Join us next week. Good night, everybody.